Misfits, people ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it's our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Dominic Rubino. Dominic's an interesting misfit. He's a serial entrepreneur who's had businesses in the construction trades, contracting, mail order, pharmaceuticals, real estate, and business coaching. But it took a long time for Dominic to feel like he could call himself an entrepreneur. And the turning point actually came after he took a business from 0 to 120 million in sales. I'm really interested to talk with him about that today. And he says he did it with some serious internal dysfunction. So don't we all have that in businesses from time to time, right?
Yeah.
So you may have heard of him, though, not so much from what I've just shared, but as the host of two very popular podcasts, Profit Tool Belt and Cabinet Maker Profit System. He's also the founder of the book Construction Millionaire Secrets. Dom is really a true misfit and a Swiss Army knife of entrepreneurship. So we're going to hit on all the topics I can get to with him today across all areas of entrepreneurship. So Dom, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
That was a great intro. I'm ready. I am a misfit and I'm ready to go.
Awesome, man. Well, it's great to have you on. And as we do with every guest, you have a very unique story of how you got to where you're at. So take 5 minutes or so, condense how much you need to, but just tell us, how did you get to where you're at?
You know, so all of this, the undercurring theme of all of this is I became a business coach. And the reason I became a business coach is because I suck at business. I mean, so much so that I remember I was running a trades company, and one day it was just that worst day I ever had at work. We're about to get dark here, Dave, if that's okay. I drove through an intersection hoping to get hit by another car. It was bad. I couldn't figure it out. I could not possibly work harder. I couldn't have possibly worked more hours. I couldn't have possibly cared about my clients or my customers more. I worried about everybody. I could not make a dime to save my life. And I was just kind of fed up. And so I asked my uncle, and I have to underscore this, a new immigrant to the country who had built a very successful construction business. I'm like, what do I do? And he put me in touch with his accountant, who I came later to find out was a partner of his in real estate investing. And the accountant said, buddy, you got to start reading books. Stop acting like you know what you're doing, because you don't. And so I started reading books and taking courses. And, back then, Dave, I was buying cassettes. I'm old.
Hey, I used to buy them too, man. Listen to them in the car. So I love it.
Yeah.
So I saw the other day, I did just anecdote real quick. I saw the other day, it was like Gen X, like the only generation that had to deal with like cassettes, CDs, and then digital So
the whole art, we've had the whole
arc of it all.
Yeah. But, you wouldn't know to follow me that I was ever going to do this, other than I've always had an entrepreneurial flair. My first company was a trades company, but it was installing Christmas lights on homes. It was called the Yo Ho Ho Light Co. And then, in college, I did the student painting thing, which taught me an incredible amount about systems. And then I bounced around for a while and I went to corporate. Corporate was good. And that's actually where I learned to work in that that corporate mentality of we've got to get things done and don't mess around, like very serious. And I moved my way up through the ranks there, and I ended up working internally there as a business coach, but it wasn't even called that back then because I've been coaching since 2000. So the word business and coach was never used in a sentence at the same time. They just weren't the same things. Yeah. So do you want me to keep going?
Sure. Well, actually, no, I want to pivot because I mentioned at the beginning, and maybe this was where you'd go anyways, your turning point came after you took a business from 0 to 120 million.
My mental turning point did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
You know, so I used to get Amway'd all the time, and I'm not knocking anybody who's doing Amway or MLM, but it's not my thing. And I would get Amway'd all the time, and they'd always say, I'm an entrepreneur. And so to me, it just had a sting to it that didn't feel right. So I'd never wanted to write entrepreneur on my business card. So through business coaching, I was selling used junk on eBay when eBay first started. And from there, I moved into selling used books, some funny stories in the whole selling used books. And from there, I pivoted into mail order medications from Canada to the United States. And that was the company I built from, when I say 0, I mean a spreadsheet, and this sounds like a good idea, to 120 million in sales, 500,000 packages a year. I had an inbound call center of 120 people, outbound call center of 10, and 40 pharmacists and pharmacy technicians working for me. And I'm not a pharmacist. I'm a businessman.
So tell us about that journey though. So from spreadsheet to putting this all together and doing it. I mean, it's always find a way, make a way as entrepreneurs, right? But what were some key things that you learned on that experience? And when you talk about that turning point that made you say, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Took 120 million in revenue to do that. Talk about that mental shift and what that did for you. Because you went on, I think you built a couple of multi-million-dollar companies and sold them and everything, right? So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, the mental shift came slowly for me just because I never wanted to say it, and I didn't feel the need to say it. But learning that every single day there was going to be a game-ending problem on my desk at some point during the day. But getting to the point where I was like, bring it on, do it. Harder things have tried to stop me before. And so, one of the things I talk to contractors about all the time is turn and face your problems. They're like bullies on a schoolyard. And I guess I wish I'd known this as a kid. But face that bully and walk towards them, and they suddenly back down. And it's the same thing with problems, right? And so if you throw me a problem, I'm going to go under it, over it, around it, through it, or I'm going to redefine it so it suits my purposes. And that is probably the biggest lesson I learned, because there was a problem a day, and the problems were huge, massive. You're dealing with big numbers, you're dealing with an industry I really didn't know. I didn't know anything about medications. I know about business and multiple people, cultures within the company, how to onboard people. We were hiring 10 call center agents a week to build ourselves up to the level we needed. And we were running out of a warehouse. It was not a beautiful call center operation. It was ugly.
And was this inbound or outbound or both that they were having to do?
Inbound. Yeah, inbound.
Okay.
So we started, you start with a website, right? And we were selling stuff on eBay. eBay was the first place we sold, I think it was Claritin. We sold Claritin, and we didn't even own the product. We had to go to Costco and buy it after we sold it. And then we started, moving really heavily into over-the-counter medications because we weren't pharmacists. But over-the-counter medications are not very cheap. They're cheaper in Canada than they are in the United States for exactly the same medication.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons, but it comes down to politics and just viewpoints on social standing. It doesn't matter, but there's a price difference. And so it's really in the medical tourism space that business exists. Yeah. So we just went at it, and every day there was a bigger problem than the day before. Bring it on.
Well, that's a great point too. It's I've said it a ton of times on this show. It's lessons that I've learned, and you hear pretty consistently across successful entrepreneurs is, businesses succeeding in business is really solving problems. And the more and bigger problems that you can solve, the bigger your business can grow, right? So, it's no shock to hear that, but I think it's really important for people to understand, like, if you're having problems, it's actually a good thing, because everyone that you solve, you are building and growing and making things better. So seek them out, find them, right? I always talk about too, the problems that we need to get to the most are usually the little things that we don't want to do, like that we neglect in a business, right? For example, documenting a process, things like that we know we need to do, but we don't.
Right.
Just like, I just want to make more sales or whatever, right? But it's those things that come and bite you later on, right? So
that's right.
So yeah, looking for where the
That's
problems are at, solving them,
and fixing
huge.
Them. And if that same problem keeps showing up, and it shows up every week or every second Tuesday, you're like, you know what? We should have a system for this. And the one thing I've come to learn over many years is that fixing the problem is one thing, but fixing the root cause of the problem is the thing. Is the thing.
Absolutely.
And it took me a long time to figure that out. Like, you really like swim upstream from the problem. Always seek to go as high as you can in the problem and figure out where to really fix it.
Well, the interesting thing is a lot of times finding the root cause is a problem in itself.
It is. Yeah. Sometimes you have to walk around blind and, is this the problem? Is this the real problem? Yeah.
Right. And so you have to experiment a little bit and stuff too. And again,
can I tell you a classic one?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This is like, it's classic. It's classic and it's weird. Is that you'll have a company that has an accounts receivable problem. And, they'll talk to me, owner to owner, and they'll say, or owner to business coach, and they'll say, hey, listen, we have great clients, but we have trouble collecting that last 20, 30%. We just always have trouble. And so our cash flow is constricted. If we just brought in that money, it'd be better. And so for years, I was like, we need a system, we need a process, we need clearer paperwork. But finally I realized, and I always follow this scent trail, I'm like, who's in charge of your accounts receivable? And I'll just pick a name out of the air. Let's say it's Sean. Could be a guy named, girl name, right? Oh, Sean's in charge of our AR. I'm like, tell me about Sean. And they'll say, Sean, nicest person in the world, so polite, so kind, so understanding. You're like, there's our problem. Because when you get a smart person on the other end of the line who owes money to the company and Sean's on the line, they're going to appease to Sean's personality and say, you know what? We are going to get you that payment. It's just going to take us a bit. And Sean's a people pleaser. And Sean will go, no problem. Yeah. Right. And that's not what you need. You need Shane. I'll just say Shane. Shane's got Guido. Yeah. Geez. I've got stories about that since my name's Dominic, but but you see what I mean? It's the root cause, and you can go and create all the fanciest systems you need, but you might have, in that case, a people problem that's showing up as an AR problem. And I'll stop there.
Well, that's an excellent point too. And it's another great lesson from business is understanding the different personality types and which ones make sense for the roles. So I've always been there's tons of, personality analyzers out there and stuff. I've always liked DISC because it's simple. It's easy to understand. It's been around 100 years.
Love it.
And it's pretty tried and true. And so, you can understand that people pleaser type, which is like customer service and that sort of thing, versus where you need somebody that's more of the C, maybe in accounting and that sort of thing. And,
facts.
On your frontline sales. And so once you understand the personality, it's almost an unfair advantage, right? But it makes it very easy to say, okay, for this role, what type of personality do you need? And then that's what you look for, obviously, in your interviewing stuff. It makes a huge difference. So that's a great point that you bring up there. It
makes a massive difference. Dave, do you remember I told you that for a while that company was a book company?
Yeah. Yeah,
it was
you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So like as I transitioned from selling used junk to books to pharmaceuticals, anyways, when we got books, I'd get lots of books. There's stories about how I used to get books, but I remember finding one. It was old. It's like The Way of the Ninja or something like that. And I kind of like martial arts and it looked cool. So I started thumbing through it. And, ninjas were the assassins of the Japanese culture and there was very structured hierarchical. And I was reading it and they were talking about DISC. Now this is way before DISC. You're talking about ancient Japanese philosophy. But it said in there, if you have somebody who's outgoing and gregarious, the way to get him is to appeal to his ego and feed him lots of wine, etc. If you have somebody who's serious and contemplative, do this, this, and that. And I was reading it, and I'm like, these guys are talking about DISC profiles. And they didn't, just different words, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is funny how this stuff is recycled, through time. In fact, Think and Grow Rich, great book. A lot of people have read it and all that stuff. A lot of that messaging's in the Bible. You see it even there, back even to Aristotle, Socrates, and all that stuff. So a lot of these things have been said in different ways, and that should tell you something, right? It's part of the consistencies of human nature and understanding it, which, when you start to learn that, it does make it easier too. You mentioned, we talked yet another business that you had bootstrapped and then ultimately sold too. What was that one?
So when I sold the pharmacy, and the pharmacy was a family business, and so that's got its own bonkers going on in it, right? I sold it, and so I was looking for another business to buy, and I ended up becoming partners with Brian Tracy, who's a pretty well-known name in the world of business improvement, sales improvement, self-improvement. I saw you did an interview with Mike Koenigs.
Oh, yeah.
I originally met Mike when he was at a Brian Tracy event, so him and Kiyosaki, those guys all hang out and do things together. Admittedly, Brian's brand is a little older now, right? But anyways, he had started a franchise, a business coaching franchise. And I know business coaching, and I know how to build a practice as a business coach, and I understood franchising. And so I bought that. I became partners with Brian in that. And we had another operating partner who I was running the business with, but he had 6 franchisees at the time, and they were all failing. And so my partner and I bought that company from and with Brian, and then built it took 13 years, but I got it to 237 units globally before I sold that.
Pretty
so that
awesome.
was another good exit. There's an NDA on that, so I can't talk too much about it, as you would imagine, but people can do the math. 237 franchise units around the world is a significant business. Most franchises never go past 50.
Right. No, it's a great, it's a great success story. So that actually brings up a good question surrounding that. So obviously, being a business coach, there's a number of things that you've learned, principles that you've cultivated over the years that, probably are fairly consistent across, your different people that you coach or businesses that you coach. And I'd like to dig in on some of those. In fact, I want to do a 1-minute break. I want to come back and dig in on some of those. So we'll do that. We'll be right back.
Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again.
All right. So Dom, we were talking about obviously your experience as a business coach and coaching for 20 plus years. And I mentioned there's probably some consistent principles, some consistent things that you see across most business owners that you can apply to obviously be more successful, or maybe pitfalls, things like that to watch out for. What are those things for you, and how can people take them and use them?
That's a good question, and it has a lot of different angles I could take. First of all, it doesn't matter what the industry is. We're talking about the business of business. So it doesn't matter if somebody, I'm in construction, so I'll speak about it from a construction viewpoint, but it could be dentists and chiropractors or grocers, doesn't matter. But the thing that's most important is the attitude of the owner. When they come in, are you coachable? And are you at that point in your business where you're like, I have tried everything. Something has to change. I'm capable. I'm capable of working hard. I need to learn how to work smart. And then we go into the answer to your question, which is they crave simplicity and they want to get away from complexity, right? So show me the simple way to fix this issue. To the point, Dave, that I've had to change the way I talk and keep it dead simple, which is actually very hard to do. And I learned that from Brian Tracy. Anything that looks really easy is really hard to master.
Good point.
You know?
So with that said, then as a backdrop, what are some of those simple things that, and maybe this goes to, I was reading some of, just preparing for this, and I noticed that there's you've got 8 profit leaks that you can teach to fix in a business, right? That you talk about. But I think, in addition to maybe those, and maybe share all of them, share some of them, but are there key things that every business should focus on from a simple standpoint to ensure they are more successful? So
yes,
go ahead.
Yes. So the very first thing to focus on is find out what the owner wants. Does the owner want more time? Do they want more money? Do they just want a better operating team? And we use a simple system. I latch on to EOS. I think you can see the book behind me, Traction by Gino Wickman. Yep. Excellent book.
Yep.
And that's a nice, simple system. And what it does is and I hope everybody out there goes to buy the book. Then I hope they read it. And then I hope they put it in place. Right? But it's a very simple system for download. Imagine stuffing a USB key, a thumb drive, in your ear, or if you want to be funny, up your nose. And you download everything in your brain onto one document. And that document's going to become your boss for the next 10 years. Now, I know I just said boss to entrepreneurs, but that's what I mean. That's you saying today what you want to accomplish. As long as you're true to yourself and you use that as a guiding document, you can always shoulder check that document. What am I supposed to be doing right now? And you go right back to the top of the list. And the top of the list might be the answer to the question you're asking. Always seek to answer the highest question or the first bottleneck or the first hurdle. And then once that's solved, move on to the others.
Well, and there's a couple of things you mentioned, and it's important. Most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want, because they've never taken the time to just sit down and ask what they want.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's the first thing for any business owner. If you haven't actually, and this is not something you just do once, it's something you should do, I would do it every 6 months. But from there, you can adjust. I think what you're talking about too, I've implemented EOS in a number of companies, and it's the VTO is what's called the Vision Traction Organizer, which is kind of where you lay it all out, like 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year goals, your mission, your vision, your principles, your core values, all that gets laid out there. And again, it's a great exercise in traction, and that process is a great process for that, because it gives you that structure, right? And that's what a lot of businesses are missing too, is okay, I know I need to do these things, but what's the structure I should do it under? So systems like that are really good, and they force you to have to think and put these things to paper. So it's a great starting, but obviously it shouldn't be the ending point. And then you move to execution, which is the hardest thing, right? So it's always, 5% idea, 95% execution. So what are your thoughts on how entrepreneurs can execute that once they've done this?
So people like me exist because of execution. And by the way, we're not going back to the way of the ninja where they're whacking people. I just mean a business, and we're not talking about me. We're just talking about somebody to hold you accountable will help you get things done faster. Or, the fancy word would be shortened time frames. You look like you're a pretty fit and healthy guy. I like to go to the gym. It's not like I don't know how to do a push-up, but there's something different about having somebody standing over you saying, your elbows are a little bit flared. Why don't you tuck them in? Well, I know that. And yet I wasn't doing it, right?
Yep.
So having accountability from somebody whose pure intent is your betterment, go find that. And the other challenge on that is it's probably not your father-in-law, because your father-in-law cares about his daughter. It's probably not your accountant, because your accountant cares about the tax code. It's not your chief vendor, like somebody who sells you your vehicles or your capital equipment, because they want to sell you more capital equipment. You actually have to go find somebody whose intent is your betterment.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And it should be somebody outside that you don't have that kind of initially the personal tie to or anything like that, right? They should be able to be objective, right? It's hard to have that if you're tied closely to them in some way. So
a little frosty, a little friendly. There should be a balance of frosty and friendly. Yeah.
I mentioned it before. I'd love to hear some of them. 8 profit leaks to fix a business. I know this plays on the construction angle, but go ahead.
It does. But those leaks exist in almost any business. But in construction, we have those leaks, and they're like death by 1,000 cuts. Or if you want to think about it in a funnier way, if you've ever tried to give your cat a pill, Sure. And you look at your forearm afterwards and you're like, I'm going to die from my cute little kitty cat scratching me so much. Each of those little oozing leaks is happening in your company right now, right? And those leaks follow the same format for all of us. And if you imagine them like flagstones, like paving stones on a path, there's 8 of them. So you're going to go pick up the first one and you're going to look underneath that paving stone and there's a leak. And maybe that leak is around sales or process or people, whatever it is. Just fix one of those and then carefully put the stone back down, move to the next one and pick that one up. But those leaks exist whether you're doing $500,000 or $500 million. It simply doesn't matter. It's an evergreen list. Evergreen.
And so how does somebody go about like looking for, identifying, finding each one of these in their business? Again, it's going to be different for every business, but
it is.
If somebody's going to go to one place to start, that's pretty consistent across businesses, where would you say?
I would say, so first you have to understand what you're trying to solve, because doing them in the wrong order could be a waste of time. You need to do them and you need to do them all, but doing them in the wrong order could be a waste of time. But let me temper what I just said with something else that's going to offend some people. Imagine you're taking somebody who's unfit to the gym. It doesn't matter whether they get on the treadmill. It doesn't matter whether they start just eating differently. It doesn't matter whether they do weight training. You're taking an unfit person to the gym, they're going to see improvement. If you're starting on the path of improving your business, do something. But I'm also going to urge you to be that owner who chooses one thing and posts a win with your company by showing your team, we achieved that change. Like we now answer phone calls within 3 rings. Way to go, team. That was fantastic. That could be the only thing you work on this year. Answer the phone within 3 rings. Once your team sees that, they're like, oh, okay. It wasn't Dom read a book this weekend about answering the phone quickly and ultimate customer service. And then next week I read another book on something else, right? Time management. And now I've got everybody chasing the time management thing. Choose one thing, go do that thing, accomplish that thing, celebrate that thing, choose another thing.
Hearing you say that reminds me, I had Tom Ziegler on a while back, and I asked him, what is the surest and fastest path to success? And he said, replacing a bad habit with a good habit and doing that over and over again. And I kind of hear that's what you're saying is like, look for the bad habit in your business, fix that bad habit, then pick the next bad habit and so on. But the focus is the key to that, right? So focusing is everything, right? Where your focus goes, your energy flows and your success comes from and everything else, right? So it's,
that's right.
I think one problem that people have is they try to do everything all at once and they ultimately are jack of all trades and a master of none and they don't get anywhere. And then they get,
they say it's not going to work. It's not going to work for me. I tried that already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, All right. So another thing that I saw that this really piqued my interest. I can't wait to hear the answer to this. Time management is like brushing your dog. What does that mean?
Hey, listen, half my job is getting new information into people's heads. And I think that humor is the way to do it. I'm also aware that I'm not that funny, but I try hard. But think of the visual of brushing your dog. Right? You go and brush your dog. His name's Fido or Betty, whatever your dog's name is. And you brush him for 10 minutes. And you get off like the equivalent of another dog, right? Hairs everywhere. You think, okay, well, I'm just going to go to the kitchen, get a glass of water. Well, now Fido's pretty happy. Like, I got so much attention from my owner. They love me so much, right? So they brush up against my leg and I look down. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How is there hair on my leg? I just brushed you for 10 minutes. Time management is not an event. It is an ongoing lifestyle choice. You constantly have to be attending to time management. Can I give you an example?
Please.
This one's easy, and everybody can do it starting today. As soon as they're finished listening to this episode, I want you to start your meetings by ending them.
Okay, go ahead.
Dave, I'll bet you do this already. You're going to. I'll say to you, you come up to me in the hallway, or you got a question for me. I'll say, Dave, that's a great question. It's 45 right now. We'll be done by 11. How does that sound?
Exactly.
I've just set the expectation.
A deadline,
Right?
not a time frame, a dedeadline on it. Because if a time frame is expandable, and people will expand that if you let them do that, right? So,
question shopping and So that's just one simple example. But time management, if somebody was really to get control of their life, get control of your time. And then your time is driven by your priorities or my priorities. What's my priority? If my priority is profitability, then I will arrange my time so that we're doing the most profitable things. If my priority is quality, if my priority is customer service, etc., that's how it flows.
Right. Yeah. And so this was and I wanted to bring it up because we've covered a number of things, right? We've covered principles for success. We've covered, leaving look for profit in your business and in a number that's why I said we're going to dance all over the place today. And time management is one of those things that as leaders, entrepreneurs, we want to give a lot of our time because we feel that we need to give a lot of our time because we feel if we don't, then the business will suffer and stuff. That's not really true. It's the quality of time that you give and, how you give it, when you give it, that really matters. The worst thing for an entrepreneur, if they don't take back their time, they're effectively owned, or, kind of a slave to the business. In that way, they've created a job for themselves. It's really for the business because it becomes so dependent on them. The best thing you can ever do is your goal as an owner in a business should be to get to the business to the point where it does not need you at all. Right. Literally it doesn't need you for anything to run. And so how do you start to do that? For me, the epiphany for me a long time ago was I used to have my calendar open to my teams. Right. And so I would come in on Monday and I had a schedule and things were set. I'm like, okay, I got this and I got this time to do this. By the end of Monday, the rest of all those times would be blocked by people going on my calendar, grabbing times and doing all that stuff, right? Yeah. And so I wouldn't be as productive or get to the things that I want. I'd end up mired in the weeds on things and stuff. So one day I just remember, I absolutely had enough. So I went and I started blocking out and just saying no appointments at specific times on my calendar throughout the week to give myself some sanity. And what that did, though, is it began to train people when I was available and when I wasn't. And so it was me taking back my time and allowing me to do that. Now, solopreneurs, it's a little different. Maybe you've got contractors, things like that. You can do the same thing. But just even that one little exercise of deciding these are my times for these things. Yeah. And outside of that, I can meet on things you booked this interview. This interview has there's very specific times that I do interviews during the week. Right. And that's it. So if it's not available, you have to go to another week, right? So once you do that, it helps you to be so much more productive. Couple that with a good, incredibly productive. For me, a good to-do list, and you do pretty well. So go ahead.
Yeah, you nailed one of the key elements of time management is that I have to be proactive about time management or I'm going to be reactive in my business. And maybe that statement should sit and linger in people's minds. If I'm not proactive about time management, I'm going to be reactive in my business. Now, Great Dave, point. Out there, somebody listening is like, well, these guys don't know what they're talking about. It's really important to me and my team that I have an open door policy, right? We need an open door policy. I'm like, you can have an open door policy. And I'm going to challenge you as your business coach. Your open door policy is now Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10:30. Done.
Office hours.
But stop. We actually have a coaching program or it's a sub program called Stop the Insanity. When I'm working with an owner or one of my teams working with an owner and you can see people coming in the office or asking questions during a coaching meeting, that is a hard stop. That's like Fred Flintstone pumping the brakes on that crazy car. And that ends now. You're the owner of the business. Can I do some crazy math with you for a second, Dave?
Go for it. I think it's really important. So, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to talk about the importance of the owner's time and the responsibility of the owner. And so I'm just going to use some round numbers and everybody can do the math on your own. If you're $1 million business, it doesn't matter, use your own number. But if you're a $1 million business and you work 50 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, it's 2,000 hours a year. And I know those numbers are rough and somebody out there is saying, well, Dominic did the math wrong. That's not accurate. Yeah, I understand that. What is your revenue responsibility per hour? It's $500. Do you know what that means? If this podcast episode is not worth $501 of value to you as the owner, delete the podcast and go to another one. And I will also challenge you, if you're not pulling out $501 worth of value, then it's on you. So when now let's take that forward. Somebody comes in and wastes my time in the office. And look, I'm a nice, happy-go-lucky. I believe in culture and building team, but it's within a structure. If somebody just wants to come in and chit-chat, like the vendor for I don't know, fuel allocation tax credits or something like that, wants to come in and chat because he was in the area, that's not going to fly. And Dave, I already know for you, a drop-in visit doesn't fly. We only work on
No.
preset appointments, right?
Yep. And so,
Sorry,
and
I feel like I
again,
was on a
if you
soapbox, but it's breaking under my
yeah,
weight.
no, but again, you train your people, right? And that's important. And
Yeah.
it is good for them too. They need that structure as well, versus being like, if you didn't do one-on-ones, same time, every single week, same day, consistent, right? All that stuff.
Same agenda.
And the only other piece I'll say this, we've got another couple questions before we get to your Misfit 3. The only other thing I'll say to this is also, be maniacal about how you, like, I block the times when I check my email every day. I block the times, like Slack. You can be down the rabbit hole if you use Slack as a business and be stuck in it for hours if you let yourself.
All day long. Yeah.
I have my times where it builds up. I knock through it, done, and I'm so much more effective, so much more efficient. And going back to our conversation earlier, it's because I'm focused on it. Because if you usually what people are doing is they're in a meeting, they're checking their email, they're checking their Slack, they're doing all that at once. They're not focused, and so they can't put the effort that is worth the value, as you just talked about, into it. So it's really important that going back to the little things, right, and discipline and things like that, that you do that well. I think it's important. I'm partly curious, being a podcaster myself, but you've built 2 very popular podcasts and built businesses around them. I commented, I think when we first met, that you were really smart to go very niche, right? Very focused.
You mean
niche.
cabinet maker profit system?
Exactly.
Pretty specific.
I guarantee you somebody's going to watch this, somebody listening to this has a podcast or wants to do a podcast, right, for themselves or their business. What, just a few tenets of your playbook for creating a business with a podcast. What do those look like?
Well, one of the questions that really consumed me in the beginning was how to monetize the podcast. And I have not figured that out. But what does happen is I end up getting the very best people in the world who self-select to talk to us. And then some become our clients and some don't. That's just the way the world works.
Right.
But what I found is the filter is, like, my business is completely changed because of the podcast. I have 3 other business coaches on the team as well, and they're very busy. So we're a busy, ongoing entity, and I'm sure you know about your own model. But I have found that it's a filter because people can learn about me, and here, for instance, there's a couple of rules for our show. One of them is we don't swear. You're like, okay, well, that's interesting. But do you know what the implication of that is? I get really family-oriented, faith-based people who contact us and say, Dom, I want to take care of my people and I want to take care of my family. I'm running this business as hard as I can, but I don't want to step outside of my values. Can we talk? I'm like, absolutely. But before, in the old days when you did direct mail and whatever, you'd get somebody contacting you who was interested who didn't fit my values at all. And I might have to change or soften the edges of my values to work with that person. I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
And so I find that the podcast is a really nice filter to find the people who think more like me. And if they don't, they just go listen to another show, and that's fine too.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And again, and I guarantee you, when you sacrifice those values or those principles to work with people in the past, they probably weren't the best contracts, clients, relationships, or anything, right? And your heart probably wasn't in it as much with them. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a great way to approach doing a podcast. I love the connections that are made through things like this. I now know Dom. So if I find a cabinet maker who's having some trouble, I can send him your way.
You say, go talk to my buddy Dom. Yeah.
Last question for you before I get to your Misfit 3. I saw this, and I don't know if it was a joke, but I'm going to ask it. Fly fishing. So
yes,
you're a fly fisherman.
Yes.
And what lessons has fly fishing taught you about life and business?
So I fly fish just so that I could be quiet because I talk a lot, as you could probably tell. I love the forest. I've been, I go out in the bush as much as I can. Patience and trying new things. Maybe that's it, because I can never figure out the right fly, the right presentation, the right everything. And there's a science behind it. I don't have time to learn the science. It is an art and a science and and then you need lots of time. But I'll tell you, one of the things, and this will come up in our Misfit 3, is I've also been able to bring together friends of mine and around fly fishing, and we go do stuff that's based on fly fishing, which is really nice, and I don't know, I just enjoy it. I like the quiet. I like being in the forest. Honestly, it just recharges my batteries. And Yeah, there's nothing nicer.
That's great, man. It's a great way to end it. I like those, both those, it's true. Finding the quiet time, the patience and everything is so important for entrepreneurs. So we're going to take one more 1-minute break and we're going to come back with Dom's Misfit 3.
Before we get into today's Misfit 3, I want to take a minute to talk to you about a free resource available to you from the Misfit Entrepreneur, the Misfit Minute. The Misfit Minute is the free weekly resource packed with useful tips, tricks, and information from the world of Misfit entrepreneurs. It not only includes further resources on the week's Misfit Entrepreneur guest, but additional links, articles, and resources to help you be more successful. It's delivered every Friday to your inbox. To sign up, all you have to do is go to the homepage at www.misfitentrepreneur.com and you will see the Misfit Minute sign-up page. Don't miss out on this great resource and all it has to help you. Sign up today and look for it this Friday.
Okay, it's time for Dom's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take, you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Dom, what are your Misfit 3?
Let me put a caveat on here. I guarantee you that I'm going to modify these in the future, but here's what I wrote for this. Number 1, and this really is the most important to me, be the best dad and husband you can be. Just be that person. You know, you brought those kids into the world. I know you adopted a beautiful little girl. Your job, my job, just take care of our kids. That is the legacy, you know? So all of us have a different take on that. And maybe some people didn't come from the greatest of families and they didn't have great role models. Well, let me say this with all the kindness in my heart, that ends now and you get to change things. So go do that, right? That's number 1. Ready? Can I go with number 2?
Mm-hmm. Go right ahead.
Yeah, number 2, find ways to leave success clues. Find ways to leave clues of success. So one of the clues of success that I leave with my kids is from a very early age, I started telling them, I get to be your dad. Now that's a minor little sentence. You might think it means nothing, but if you think about it, you see what I'm trying to accomplish there. I get to be your dad. But then there's other things, like I also taught my kids, let's play the game called money, where we just take coins out of the jar and lay them on the carpet. You know, they grab little pillows. They're just cute little toddlers, right? And we sorted the money by shapes and what the symbol was on it. But now my kids played money, and guess what? Both my kids are pretty good with money right now. So I don't know where that's going to go in the future, right? And then the other one is this buddy fishing trip I put together. So all of my friends are successful people on their own. I hang out probably with very similar people like you, Dave, right? Mm-hmm. They're all successful in what they do and have done. But then Dommy comes along and he's like, hey, once a year, let's go on an epic fishing trip somewhere. And so that's taken us some crazy places. Last year we went to Molokai fly fishing for bonefish. Fantastic. Cool. By the way, I did not catch one, but my buddy did. And he talks about that a lot. He talks about it a lot. And then number 3, find opportunities where others see scarcity. There is opportunity. And sometimes, quite often, saying no to the opportunity is the most powerful things, but see the opportunity when everybody else sees scarcity. Because we will always solve problems by being clever more than we'll solve them with money. You can have all the money in the world and you still have problems, but if you're clever, you could solve anything, anytime. And I live on that one.
Dom, that's an excellent Misfit 3. And that last one is, I think, really, truly important for people to go back, listen to it, understand it, because it is so true. If people do want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Well, if they can't find me, they ain't looking. So you can look me up, obviously, in the show notes for this show, and I really appreciate being here. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dominic Rubino. You'll know there's only another Dominic Rubino, and he's some young college wrestler. That's not me. Or you can find me on the podcasts. One of them is called Profit Tool Belt, and that's profit like money, not like profit in church. And then the other one, as you mentioned, Cabinet Maker Profit System. And the overarching thing that holds them all together is Contractor Wealth Systems, because we're here to build a platform for contractors to build multi-generational wealth.
Excellent. We'll link to that in the show notes, as you mentioned. They are the best in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. No offense. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us. Welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. And it'll become a regular watcher of the show, listener, subscriber. And for all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of my personal growth routine, my block time. I go back through these episodes with great guests like Dom, and I take my best pieces of wisdom and habits and strategies and things like that, and I share them with you. So go out and check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it and share it with others, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Dom shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Dom, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Thank you for having me.